And it's time for Lefties Losing It. And they're not only losing their minds, their tenuous grip on reality and their moral compass, lefties are also losing their jobs. Painfully unfunny, low-rating, tedious, afflicted comic Jimmy Kimmel is off air indefinitely, perhaps forever, after his shocking remarks regarding conservatives, regarding Charlie Kirk and the alleged assassin.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
And if that wasn't bad enough, he thought it'd be a good idea to launch into a diatribe mocking President Donald Trump's grief for Charlie. Jimmy got hit with the karma truck and perhaps he should have listened to his own advice. Only last month, he was speaking with fellow tedious afflicted comic Sarah Silverman and decrying those on the left who are repelling people from the Democrats, repelling them by saying awful stuff. Look in the mirror, Jimmy.
It's the loud voices that scare people from saying what they believe and make you think twice about a joke or whatever, these things. And, a lot of their points are valid, but a lot of them are also just repulsive. And I mean, they repel people.
And during that chat, we found out just how demented these two are because they are still bleating about fleeing the country, fleeing Trump's America. What are they waiting for? Be gone, miscreants.
Well, a lot of people I know are thinking about where they can get citizenship. And
I do have Italian. I did get Italian citizenship.
You do?
I do.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, I do have that. And what's going on is as bad as you thought it was going to be.
Way worse.
It's so much worse. It's just unbelievable. Like, I feel like it's probably even worse than he would like it to be.
Probably, yeah. I mean, I do, every once in a while, I'll Google Trump regrets or MAGA regrets just to see all the people that I'm not happy that they're upset and but it makes me hope that maybe this will bring people together.
These people are divorced from reality. They're almost beyond parody. I mean, how do you even mock that? For the record, every poll of Republican voters shows that there is no regret, that Republicans are terribly happy with their man. And those two miserable moaners also said that Trump's America is so much worse than their worst fears. But they're still in America. They have all the money, all the resources in the world to live wherever they want, and they remain in America. Now let's hear from Kamala's former boyfriend, Montel Williams, who had this sick take on Tyler Robinson.
I don't believe he was motivated politically. I think this was motivated emotionally. I think this was a emotionally stunted person who literally, when I say it this way, just hear me, tried to defend his significant other, not trying to defend some ideology.
But although I do think there's clearly an ideological difference. That's why I played about what they said about the family. I mean, the ideological difference that he was reacting to.
Now, the media lies and lies by omission continue, but every now and then they get called out. Listen here as Ted Cruz takes on Kaitlan Collins' absurd claims that we have no idea why Charlie was murdered. The motives are unclear.
You said a lot there, and we don't have a motive yet. We don't know yet. We're waiting. Obviously, we've heard what the governor's had to say, what the FBI director said today.
Come on, we don't have a motive yet.
We know.
We don't have a motive yet.
What's happening with?
Really, that's CNN's position.
I mean, from law enforcement,
he just happened
Senator.
to fire the gun in celebration. You can't tell the motive.
Senator, that's not what I said, and I said law enforcement hasn't laid out a direct motive. They've laid out a lot of evidence here of these messages and what
actually
the
they
shooter
have.
said to
They've said that
family
he was a
members
left-wing
and to
activist who
roommates.
hated Charlie Kirk.
Yes, an absolute lie on CNN. Authorities have been clear in telling us that this individual was a far-left radical who hated Charlie and the so-called hateful message he was spreading, i.e. the truth. But Kaitlan was determined to be embarrassed again. Watch her double down by making objectively false claims.
I'm saying that law enforcement has not put a specific motive. You know that there's a difference of what they're putting in a legal argument than what you're talking about. And you're not even, we're not even arguing about the facts here.
What you just said is false,
Senator,
Kaitlan.
No.
Kaitlan, facts. Hold on a second. Let me answer your statement, because what you said is factually
Senator, with
false.
all due respect,
law enforcement.
With all due respect, you're putting a lot of statements that I did not say, and I want to get back to. We just laid out the facts.
You just said law enforcement has not made out a motive. That is objectively false. We just spoke to the Deputy Attorney General.
That is
objectively false.
They have not said a concrete motive of exactly what it was.
And
they laid out
CNN
every
should not be
evidence that we
engaged in
know so far.
misinformation. Kaitlan, answer my question.
It's not
Have you seen the polling
Senator.
that shows the vast majority of Democrats believe this murderer is a Republican and a Trump supporter? Have you seen that polling?
Let me get back to my questions, though, Senator, because the question here
You're not going to answer that
was
question?
actually
Are you going to answer
what
that
you were
question?
saying
You
about
have seen that
investigations that you'd like to see.
So you're not going to
Senator,
answer
I'm the one asking the questions here.
Yes, you are asking the questions and answering them yourself, Kaitlan. Will we hear from Senator Cruz at some point, I wonder? Will he be allowed to utter a single sentence without Kaitlan talking over him?
And the question...
No, we're having a conversation. I understand that you want to say things that are factually false, and then you don't actually want the facts. You don't actually want the facts laid out.
Now, to round off Lefties for the week, a week where we have been told to lower the temperature, where we've been told to calm down after one of our brightest, one of our most brilliant and most decent stars was assassinated, after we've watched his murder be celebrated, where we've watched the media lie, straight out lie about the alleged assassin and his motives, as well as lie about Charlie. They want us to come together, to be unified with those who want to see us dead. Well, Vice President JD Vance addressed those sentiments. He wants unity, but first we have to acknowledge the truth.
Something has gone very wrong with a lunatic fringe, a minority, but a growing and powerful minority on the far left. There is no unity with people who scream at children over their parents' politics. There is no unity with someone who lies about what Charlie Kirk said in order to excuse his murder. There is no unity with someone who harasses an innocent family the day after the father of that family lost a dear friend. There is no unity with the people who celebrate Charlie Kirk's assassination. And there is no unity with the people who fund these articles, who pay the salaries of these terrorist sympathizers, who argue that Charlie Kirk, a loving husband and father, deserved a shot to the neck because he spoke words with which they disagree. Did you know that the George Soros Open Society Foundation and the Ford Foundation, the groups who funded that disgusting article justifying Charlie's death, do you know they benefit from generous tax treatment? They are literally subsidized by you and me, the American taxpayer. And how do they reward us? By setting fire to the house built by the American family over 250 years. I am desperate for our country to be united in condemnation of the actions and the ideas that killed my friend. I want it so badly that I will tell you a difficult truth. We can only have it with people who acknowledge that political violence is unacceptable, and when we work to dismantle the institutions that promote violence and terrorism in our own country.
Joining me now is political advisor and commentator CJ Pearson. CJ, Charlie Kirk was instrumental in JD Vance becoming vice president. JD Vance has said that himself. He wouldn't be VP without Charlie. And what the vice president said there was powerful and undeniably true, and he named names.
You know, you're exactly right. You know, there's been a lot of talk about so-called coexistence on the left, but I got to tell you, when it comes to this political violence issue, there's a lot of folks in the media who try to make this a both sides issue. But here's the deal, to me at least, and I think to a lot of people here in the West, is that these bullets are only going from left to right. You know, you look at they didn't try to kill President Trump once, they tried to kill him twice. You look at the fact of the congressional baseball shooting that happened just a few years ago when they tried to kill Majority Leader Steve Scalise, that was a leftist. And you look at what happened with Charlie Kirk, that was again a leftist. These people need to condemn political violence. These people need to rid themselves of the hate that fills their heart. And so when you talk about whether or not this is a both sides issue, yes, both sides should condemn political violence. But again, we cannot ignore the fact that it is disproportionately put those on the left that are committing these egregious acts of violence. And we ought to stand up for it.
Absolutely. Now to the news earlier today that Disney is pulling ABC's Jimmy Kimmel Live, the late night program. They're pulling it indefinitely. Many are speculating it's never going to come back. CJ, I played his hideous lies about Charlie and the alleged killer on last night's program. For those who missed it,
we hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
Just vile. And he followed that up, CJ, by mocking how President Trump was mourning Charlie.
You know, it's absolutely disgusting, and but on par for, the elite liberal left. And I got to tell you, I'm actually glad that his show has been so-called indefinitely suspended. I think it's well on its way of being canceled, because I thought, actually, aside from politics, I thought a late night show host was supposed to be funny. I didn't know that was such a radical idea or expectation to have. But here's the thing, the reason these liberals are so akin to just saying whatever they say, regardless of how vile it is, because for a long time they were free of consequences. But now, because of the fact that the silent majority has decided that we will no longer be the silent majority, we will be the loudest hell majority, they are finally being held to account, and thank God for it. So he and Stephen Colbert, I hope they can help each other with their resumes and dust them off, because it seems as if they're going to need it.
CJ, there's a lot of debate about consequence culture versus cancel culture. I don't really care what you call it, but you can't have it be one-way traffic. And finally, the left is being held to their own standards. They're getting a taste of their own medicine. And I think in the long run, it is going to be a win for free speech. And hopefully it will teach them to be able to tolerate differing opinions. Now, President Trump has done something that I think is long overdue. He is moving to have Antifa registered as a terrorist organisation. What do you think about this? This is an extremist far-left group, and they have done enormous harm in recent years.
No, I think this is an incredible move by President Trump, and I think that it's long overdue. Antifa is indeed a domestic terrorist organization that is completely opposed to the values that make America America, and we should go after them with everything that we've got. You look at the assassination of Charlie Kirk, you have an individual who actually echoed a lot of the beliefs that underpin the Antifa agenda. Maybe if we were actually going after them, should have, this would not have happened. So I think this is a long overdue move. Thank God for it. We got to make sure that we're doing all that we can to keep Americans safe. And to keep Americans safe, what does that entail? And going after these so-called anti-fascists who are actually more fascist than the people they accuse of being so-called fascists.
I'm so glad you said that, because this is one of the things that really bugs me about the media. We have it happen right here in Australia, and I'll show you an example. CNN, this is their pitiful reporting. In their opening sentence, they say, President Donald Trump said he is designating far-left anti-fascism group Antifa as a terrorist organisation. CJ, there is nothing anti-fascist about Antifa. Just because they call themselves that to try to excuse their behaviour doesn't mean it's accurate. It's like claiming North Korea is democratic because they call themselves the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, or that white supremacists are superior because that's what they call themselves. This dishonesty in how Antifa is represented in the media has to stop.
No, you're exactly right. Just because they're good at branding doesn't mean they should get kudos for that, right? These people are not anti-fascist. Anti-American, they're anti-free speech, they're anti-dialogue, they're anti-debate, they're anti-everything that folks like Charlie Kirk stood for. This was an individual who didn't care about, conservative supremacy on college campuses. He cared about actual equality of ideas between the exchange of them. And they didn't believe that that was enough. And so they took his life because of it. And so, President Trump is exactly right. AG Pambani is exactly right to go after these people to ensure they do not have the ability to commit the acts of violence that they have a long track record of doing right here in America. And again, we should encourage that. We should continue to protect that, because these people, they hate this country. And if they had their way, there would be no other half of this nation with the ability to say that they love their God, they love their country, and they love the idea of a nuclear family. They would absolutely eliminate every right to say those things.
Oh, yeah, we've seen that. We've seen that all too well in recent years. CJ, I want to play you a clip of you with Charlie on a university campus. This is special.
Being hunted?
Let me tell. Okay, y'all can laugh, but until you have walked as a black person on this campus, y'all truly don't understand.
CJ, come here, really quick. I have a question. Come here. Go right there. Right there. So CJ, just really quick. You're a black person. Are you hunted at the university?
You know, I don't feel hunted at this university, but I guess the difference between me and some people here is that I don't choose to be a victim, Charlie, which I think is the biggest problem we have here today are people who wake up every single day looking for a reason to be oppressed.
Tell me about that, CJ, and tell me about what Charlie was like as a man, as a friend.
You know, Rita, that clip actually makes me a little bit emotional because, when I was just 12 years old, he was one of the first people to reach out to me in the national conservative movement. I was a young kid who made a viral YouTube video, and he DM'd me on Twitter and said, "Hey, CJ, loved your work, love your content. If I can ever be helpful to you, let me know how." And as someone who grew up in a Democrat household with parents who weren't the fondest of my political beliefs, to have someone that validated the mission that I was on meant a great deal to me. And at that moment, the University of Alabama, which I'm actually here now on campus at Alabama because I came back to host a memorial rally for Charlie. It's a full circle moment. This is an individual who stood for the ideas of free speech, who stood for the ideas of loving your God, loving your country, all things that make America America. And he went in the belly of the beast every single day, knowing the risk that came with that. But he did it because he believed that America was a country where, and it's a huge legacy to live up to. But I know that he would want us to carry on the torch. He would want us to continue to fight the good fight. And that is what honestly reassures me. I know that he's in a better place and that he's looking down upon this nation, upon this world. We see vigils and rallies all across the world of people remembering his name. And I know that he's smiling ear to ear and saying, not only is his legacy alive, but it's alive and well. And God bless him for it.
And his legacy is going to be, I think, stronger than anyone can fathom. That there are 54,000 new applications for Turning Point chapters since Charlie's assassination, CJ. There are only around 2,000 chapters in place currently. I say only, that's plenty. But tell me about the reaction from young people. We've seen the ugliness, we've talked about that, the celebrations, but there are also plenty of young people who have had their eyes opened by this entire week.
Hey, you're exactly right. And I'll talk about it on a micro scale. Again, I just wrapped up an event here at the University of Alabama here in the States. And I was talking to the Turning Point USA president, and they said that their group chat for their chapter went from 200 people to 1,000 people in the aftermath of the terrible assassination of Charlie. And I think that the deal, if Charlie always said that if he were to be remembered for anything, it would be for the courage of his faith. And for him to lead a revival like this, to lead people to go to church, to read their Bible, and to join an organization like Turning Point USA, he would have felt as if his mission had been accomplished. And so, I report to him, looking up above, that his mission has indeed been accomplished. And the work that is, lies ahead is just beginning. And we're going to do everything that we can to glorify his name and to make sure his legacy is not just what he left it as, but is bigger than he ever could have imagined.
You're so right there. And part of his legacy was the way that people have remembered him. They haven't remembered him by rioting or by engaging in acts of violence, but by having vigils, by having group prayer, and by paying a tribute to his memory. And it's all been very peaceful. CJ, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Rita.
Now, former President Barack Obama thought he'd weigh into the Charlie Kirk murder and the debates about unity and extremism. Apparently, it's all Donald Trump's fault. Everything was fine under Barack. Just ask Barack.
We have to recognize that on both sides, undoubtedly, there are people who are extremists and who say things that are contrary to what I believe are America's core values. But I will say that those extreme views were not in my White House. I wasn't embracing them. I wasn't empowering them. I wasn't putting the weight of the United States government behind extremist views.
That needs a swift response. Let's bring in host of Sarah Gonzalez Unfiltered on Blaze TV and VP of the Texas Family Project. Sarah, what is your response to former President Obama? What role, if any, did he play in the current political climate?
Well, Rita, thanks for having me back on. I would say that Barack Obama is known here in America as the divider in chief. I mean, he wants to talk about extremist views. He wants to paint a cutesy little picture of how he was when he was president. Let me remind you of some names, Rita. How about Reverend Jeremiah Wright? The chickens have come home to roost man that, of course, he made that remark shortly after 9/11. How about Louis Farrakhan, who the campaign had to, of course, hide pictures of Barack Obama and Louis Farrakhan together during the campaign because they knew that it would hurt him. How about Bill Ayers? A man whose home President Obama once visited to announce that he was running for office. This is the same domestic terrorist of this country in Weather Underground. I mean, these are extremist people Obama has always surrounded himself with. So it's very cute that he wants to play a little bit of revisionist history. Let me give you one more stat here, Rita. When it comes to racial division, which of course Barack Obama was great at, when it comes to racial division, when he was elected, America thought that race relations were good or very good. Overwhelmingly, the majority of Americans thought that. It was 70% of whites, 61% of blacks said as much. After he left office, it plunged to under 50% for whites and under 40% of blacks. So it's very interesting to watch Barack Obama, the divider in chief, sit there up on his high horse, living in Martha's Vineyard, telling us that he was never an extremist.
And this whole both sides argument, it is just so intellectually dishonest. It really is maddening to hear that, given all we've known, all we've seen. And the Obama administration was guilty of weaponising the Justice Department, various other government bodies to go after their political opponents, Sarah. And as you said, he personally championed the toxic doctrine of identity politics. The impact of that has been, well, it's being felt today. It'll probably be felt for decades to come.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, of course, we had the IRS go after conservatives under Barack Obama. They spied on Fox News reporters under Barack Obama. He, of course, was the one who spied on President Trump's campaign that we found out about later. Everyone called President Trump a conspiracy theorist because he said the Barack Obama administration is spying on me. It turns out he was right all along. I mean, this is a man who knows how to play dirty politics. In fact, I would argue that he was the one that was in charge of playing dirty politics under the Biden regime. And notice, Rita, I call it a regime because that's what it was under both Biden and Barack Obama. It is just really, really disgusting to listen to these people try to act like this type of political violence is happening on both sides. It is not happening on both sides. It is overwhelmingly not only happening on the left side, but it is also embraced by all of these left-wing lunatics. You have a poll that just recently came out from YouGov in the wake of what happened to Charlie Kirk, who was assassinated. He was publicly executed in broad daylight. And you would think if these people were serious, they would just take a moment to reflect on their own thoughts and their own hatred. And instead, liberals overwhelmingly said more than Republicans that political violence was ever acceptable. This should not be controversial. Political violence is never acceptable. And it is shocking to me that liberals can still say there are sometimes reasons for political violence. It always goes one way, Rita. There is no both sides about this.
Absolutely. And the left has got, the modern left, a violence problem. I'd argue it has a mental health problem. It certainly has a reality problem. You're in the thick of it. Like Charlie, you go into these hostile spaces all the time. Are you going to continue to do that? The risks are enormous.
Yeah, it's a conversation that I have had to have with my family and my close friends. And I mean, the reality is this. The left embraces this radical ideology because they think that it will shut us up. They cannot argue our ideas. They cannot argue our positions because they are arguing from a way of emotion, not from actual facts and statistics. So the only thing that they have left is, of course, violence. And so after talking with family and friends, and after talking with my good friend Jesse Kelly, who is, of course, a show host here in this country, he said he wanted to organize something for a bunch of us to go to Utah and all stand together where Charlie Kirk was, just to show that we are, in solidarity. And I thought about it, and he said, do you want to go? And I said, honestly, Jesse, I'm scared as hell, but we have to. I don't have another choice at this point. So I'm going to continue speaking out. All of the people I know in this space are going to continue speaking out. And if anything, this has just lit a fire under us to just remind us how important it is in this country that we have a civil debate, that we show everyone that we will not be silenced, that they cannot scare us into submission, because we know that that is the reason that they did this. We know that that is the reason that they're constantly targeting conservatives, not just with their hateful rhetoric, but of course with actual assault and, in this case, murder in broad daylight. And we can't be silenced. There's just no other option. So unfortunately, Rita, I just really don't have a choice right now. I have to continue speaking out even more boldly and even more so than ever, for Charlie at this point.
Sarah, tell me about how the left has dehumanized their political opponents. We've seen that in the past week. And yet they still persist with this, both sides, that this extremist problem is on both sides, that most of the political violence is being committed by the extreme right instead of the extreme left, when we know the reality of what has happened in recent years.
Yeah, I mean, listen, when President Trump remember, he had 2 assassination attempts on his life, one of which, of course, got him shot in the head. And after that happened, he walked onto the stage at the Republican National Convention to give his speech, and he had a bandage on his ear. And in that moment, he had his granddaughter, Kai, come on stage and make a very touching speech about her grandfather. And the day afterwards, the morning afterwards, again, you would think that there would be a little bit of self-reflection, a little bit of reflection from the left on what kind of rhetoric they were using that may have been contributing to all of the tension in this country. And instead of that, you had Whoopi Goldberg on The View going out there and telling people she didn't like the fact that Kai Trump went on stage and talked about her grandfather because it, quote, humanized him. So the left has been doing this for a very long time. Intentionally, the mainstream media has been intentionally dehumanizing us, using dehumanizing language, because if they can dehumanize us, they can demonize us. And if they demonize us, what comes next is totally justified in their minds. That is what they have been doing intentionally. They have been lying about us. They have been gaslighting us. And it really, honestly, I'm still shocked that a guy that I know that inspired me to do what I do is dead and was murdered in cold blood. But honestly, when you watch the increasing rhetoric and you watch the way that they've been amping it up and you watch the way that they have been dehumanizing us, it really shouldn't come as a shock to any of us that this was the end result of the decades of work that they have put in to deem us as evil and unworthy of living.
And yet you've got the left playing victim at the moment, Sarah. They're accusing their political opponents of cancel culture and impinging on their free speech. The latest one is online figure Destiny, who mocked Charlie Kirk's widow, Erica. It was just so disgustingly cruel. Now, he's been banned from Twitch, but I don't know, perhaps CNN will have him back.
I hate Charlie Kirk. I think he's actually a Satan spawn, but he's very, very strategically minded.
What do you think of all that, Sarah? Are the right now guilty of cancel culture?
Of course not, Rita. There's a difference between cancel culture and consequence culture. Cancel culture is when you intentionally go dig up someone's old posts from, they were 15, 18 years old, a kid, and try to use it against them, not using any of the context, any perspective of what society was like back then. Consequence culture is, of course, hey, if you are going to say something disgusting, expect society to act accordingly. And that's exactly what is happening in not just Destiny's case, but many of these cases. And, the rich irony here, Rita, is that if Charlie were here, he would be the one to be able to so eloquently explain to these people what is the difference between freedom of speech and freedom of consequences. Freedom of speech never meant that you could go out and spew whatever hateful rhetoric you want to spew and have absolutely no societal consequences for it. Freedom of speech is just your protection from the government so that the government is not censoring you. But of course, these people don't know anything about freedom of speech. They've never picked up a constitution, which is what Charlie was so great at expressing and explaining to them. So Destiny wants to talk all about his, oh, I thought conservatives were about freedom of speech. I suggest that maybe he go back and watch some of Charlie Kirk's videos so that he can adequately understand what freedom of speech and what he is entitled to and what he is protected from. And you know what? Again, consequence culture will come for you. If you say disgusting things, expect people to not want to be around you.
Sarah Gonzalez, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you.